Hello? What are you doing here? All right, fine.
What?
See? See, we've got a guest today. You might have heard that. We are today speaking with a guest that I've worked with, helped out, friends with, family friends with, and who's here to talk about women in the workplace, how it's changed over the years, how it was and how it is. Should be awesome. We had a 2.5 hour chat about it last night. Didn't mean to. Ended up being 2.5 hours though. It was good. Didn't feel like it. Then, Mark, you've been on your travels, and so on Facebook next week we're going to have a few editions of Hacky Travels.
Hacky Travels.
Hacky Travels.
So
You've been up in Scotland, haven't you?
Yeah, the bag has been to Loch Lomond for 2 days, and if I asked my wife where I was, she says I was on a Renaissance mission, but the correct term is a reconnaissance mission.
There's a bit of a difference.
We've had this phone, and she was like, "What are you doing again?" I said, "Go on, you try and say it." And she goes, "You're on your Renaissance, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Nope."
Can you imagine that out in the fields of Ukraine? I'm just going out on a Renaissance. What? Why the Russians winning? I bet he keeps going on about the Renaissance. He's sitting in the field painting pictures of rockets.
Yeah. He's got some artists with him, haven't he?
Yeah, as I look at him with his brush. It's not even explosive paint. So I'm going to chuck out some pictures next week. Today I'm going to put out Sazan, it just keeps coming out. Just keeps coming out of your mouth. Can't help it. So I'm going to put them pictures out next week as a little story. Later today, I was going to put out your little test video for your ADHD and your dyslexia test. You know, when you were reading out the poetry. It was a nice poem, that, actually. It was a nice poem. So I'll put that out later today, just so people know. And they're ready for for the update next week. How are you getting on with that? Is it good so far? It's good?
Do you want to watch me eyes go up and left or up and right?
Right. Right. Okay, I'll leave you to it. So, on to Anne. Mrs. Clark. She's been in business for running her own business for about 30 years. Originally from London, moved up here in 1990, helping small businesses, new businesses, for it's got to be more than a decade now, I think, something like that. You got your qualifications in teaching. You've been coaching for I don't know how long. You've been delivering apprenticeships in construction and engineering. You've taken companies from small to sort of 20 odd staff to about 60 odd staff. And now you're doing a lot of business strategy, training, coaching. I say that. You've also been doing HR interviews. You helped somebody with their books, doing their finances, their payroll, all of that, and your one-page business plan. So, if you want to get in touch and makes it happen, is your website open yet?
No.
andmakesithappen.co.uk. It will be though. It will be. But she's out and about and she's helping people. So, your subject, I should probably ask what the crack is first, right? We'll ease into it. So what's the crack? What have you been up to?
Me? What have I been up to? Wow.
Yeah. What's the latest in Anne's world?
Me. Well,
Other than fish.
Tropical fish. We had,
tropical fish.
because we live in a rented accommodation, we can't have a dog. We really wanted a dog. So we said the next best thing, fish. Let's have some fish. So we went and got a fish tank, got tropical fish, they don't leave, sort of hairs all over the carpet and stuff like that. So we did that. But what Mike wanted to do was he wanted the bigger fish, but we got small ones because it was a small tank. So now we went and bought a bigger tank, which is huge. And when it's full of water, you can't lift it. Me and him cannot lift it between us. If we ever want to move it, we'll have to empty it. I'm not sure what we're going to do with the fish, but hey ho. So we've got fish, and they're lovely. We're really pleased with them. It's something for Mike to sort of get his head around because he's now retired. So he needs to have something that will keep his interest going. But this time of year for me is sort of a little bit strange because, as you well know, I'm well into football. So I live in a man's world, and I always say this to everybody that, secretly, I think I must be a man, but I'm not.
It'll be the end of this. The end of the season, is it? End of the season.
End of the season. Non-league football was ended. So we don't get to see non-league now. We was actually at the Stadium of Light on Wednesday when Hebburn played Spennymoor in the Challenge Cup. We went as a neutral, but obviously Spennymoor were the favourites. They 2 leagues above Hebburn, and Hebburn won. They come away winning. So that was pretty good.
Underdog.
Yeah. But because we're season card holders at Sunderland now, our last game of the season is on Monday. It's away from home at Preston. We actually booked a hotel to go and see them play. But could we get a ticket? No. They'd sold out before they'd gone on general sale. When you have a season card, if you have to have so many points to get in the running to begin with, and because Mike had given up his season card and gone back down south and then come back, he lost all of his points. So we're sort of building them up now. But how can...
And he'd been a fan for ages, right?
Well, all his life. That's something that he's passionate about is his Sunderland. So for me, it's a bit of a sad old time of the year because what are we going to do? What are we going to do on Saturdays? You can't sit and watch the fish all day, can you? That's sort of not what it's about, is it? So
it's a bit like a lava lamp, isn't it? A lava lamp with fish in it.
So we're currently thinking of all the things that we're going to do during the closed season, and hopefully we're going to come up with some good things. I think that we're going to go and tour the Northumberland coast or something and do some stuff like that we don't normally get to do. And see the kids.
She's handed your schedule off to Mark.
Say again?
Mark will sort you out.
Oh, right, okay.
She handed it off to Mark. Mark will sort you out. He loves a plan.
Love a bit of Bambra.
Bambra. Yeah.
So, your topic of the day, as fascinating as it was, because we were talking for a bit, and then we talked for 2.5 hours, covering all sorts of angles on it, which was actually handy for me, because I had plenty of thoughts. I had no idea if any of them were just rubbish, or whether I just misunderstood something. So it clarified a lot of things. It was great. Where were you going to start?
Where I'm going to start it. I mean, women in business, in the workplace, is a huge subject. Is huge because we sort of said that yesterday. We spent 2.5 hours and not realising how much we covered. And I could go on forever, which obviously that it's not the time today to do that. But what I thought that I would do is, because I think you need to hear my experiences in women in business, because I think that I'm pretty, and I hate saying this, but typical, because I've been through a journey. And as Mark saying earlier about my time of life, I'm in the third of my life, so I've experienced quite a difference in the workplace, and being how I was brought up, because my mum was, the person, the woman. She never ever thought about starting her own business, would never even dreamt of it. I wanted to be a teacher, and that, no, you can't be a teacher, Anne, because you need to go out and earn money. And because living in the East End of London, we weren't rich at all. We didn't even have a telephone. So that was, we weren't poor. I don't mean we would. I was looked after, always had a meal on the table and all of that. But we weren't wealthy. But how I see it is that sort of started me on a different path totally, because I couldn't actually do what I wanted to do, that I was passionate about. And something reminded me when I used to swim for the county. I was a swimmer.
Ooh.
And I was always asked to look after the new members of the team when they were being introduced and help them with their stroke. So that was me, where my teaching came in. I was helping and supporting, and that's what I am today. And that, going from
Yeah.
when I was sort of 8
Yeah.
years old to now being 68 years old, I've spent all of that time helping and supporting people. But anyway, moving on. My take on life was, this was what we were conditioned, that you would go out to work at 16. I left school at 16 because that was the time that that's when we had to leave school or continue with studies. Left school at 16, and go and get a job. Go and get a job in hospitality, in banking, in a shop, in a hairdresser's, or whatever it is. All of those things really didn't interest me because I wanted to be a teacher. But then I did go into a bank. I worked for Lloyds Bank. Might I say, and I will say this proudly, in Lombard Street, the creme de la creme. So I travelled on the underground, which
Impressive.
wasn't so good, every morning, and got to work. But this is what Simon and I were talking about, that I was in the clearing department, which was in the basement. We didn't have any windows, and there was no men. It was all women. And I'm talking about a huge amount of women or girls. This is sort of where we were starting out. But the boys, or the men, they were known as messengers. They would come and pick up the post and take that. But there was more career paths for those actual messengers than what there was for the girls. Because in my day, you had a job, you found a bloke, you got engaged, you got married, and you had kids. So the pathway for a woman wasn't as easy, because employers didn't consider that you would be a long-term bet, because you would be going off and doing all those women things. And,
It's a good way to phrase
and
it.
unfortunately for me, that's what happened. And I say that because I was 21 when I got married, and I had my son, who I adore my son, I love him, wouldn't trade him in for anything. But I was 23 years old, and I didn't even know what responsibilities that I had at that time. But I did what was the norm. I went and did all the norm. And so my career, if you like, my teaching career, wasn't going to happen for a long time, because I had responsibilities now. So
Were you perceived at that time you would be a stay-at-home mum, as they tended to be then?
yes, yeah, stay at
Yeah.
home. Well, you're kidding me. My brain was like not that's not going to happen. There's only so much baby talk that you can have. I wanted the
Yeah.
stimulation. I wanted to be part of something different, and that it certainly wasn't. And again, I love my son, and he was absolute angel of a child. And I think because he's very intelligent, and I don't say that I'm intelligent, but he is. And I think that helped me in a way, because at least I had all of those things that I could talk to him about, because he was older in his ways. So,
How
Yeah.
did how did the discussion in terms of, you're ready to take that leap in your mind? Because I sort of relate to my mother. My mother was the first woman I ever knew in my family that put her head above the precipice and said, "This is not for me."
yeah.
How did you get through that
Well, it
conversation
went
or
down
that
very
leap?
badly. Am I still with you? Yeah, because I froze for a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it went down badly because I think that what happened was, and you know what I was saying to you about my first husband was an absolute, you know, he wasn't very nice, okay?
Smelly bum face. Smelly bum face, poopy
Yeah, all of
pants.
those things. So, and
Yeah.
I think it's because I challenged. I wasn't the sort of sit at home woman who did as she was told all the time, because I wanted something different from that. I didn't want to be that. And I wasn't the one to go out and push the pram and join other mothers groups and things like that, because it wasn't me. It wasn't me at all. But nobody at that point had actually said to me, "Why don't you go and start a business?" Because it wasn't the done thing. It just wasn't. You continued on your journey. But as I was getting older and, sort of seeing things differently, my first husband, again, he was the type of bloke that would go to work one day and come home and say, "Oh, I'm not going back." So it was sort of like me then had to think about, we've got a home to run, I've got a baby or a child, and so we need to do something. And this is when I sort of started looking at what I thought that I was good at. And we actually joined a brewery and went to train in hospitality and running pubs. And that was, I loved it, loved every minute of it, because I'm sociable, I do all these nice things. But again, it was about helping people, because we were doing lots of other stuff as well. So we went off and did our training, and this again is mad when I think back. I was training, I had to do the cooking, because it was the kitchen and the woman had to do that, and my husband didn't. He didn't have to do that. But we had to learn how to do cellar work, which I did as well, and he did. So I was experienced. I knew how to run the cellar and do the books and cook. Okay. And what they used to do in those days was that the man would get paid the salary, okay, and the woman would get what they was called an honorarium. It was about 30 quid a month. And what they said it was for was so that you, the woman, can iron your husband's shirts to make him presentable for the pub. Are you kidding
You
me?
wouldn't get away
So
with that,
can
would you?
you understand how I felt about that?
Oh,
So
it's
I
demeaning,
was on a mission then. I'm gonna
oh,
I'm gonna
I
make
can imagine. I fear for whoever said that to you. Oh dear me! You want to get out the room?
yeah.
It's almost like the phrase when taught my dad come to work, or my grandfather coming back from work. He would hand her a housekeeping
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, my dad used to do that. Out of his little tracing paper wage packet from the
Yeah.
railway with his little slip in. So there, that's for you.
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
that's exactly, how it was. But what we had to do was we actually had to do training and sit exams, and I actually passed my exams and he didn't. So we was in a bit of a quandary really, because he then asked me if I would phone them and say, was there a mistake? If because you passed and I didn't. It's like, no mistake at all. But that should have determined whose name went over the door, because
Landlord, landlady.
exactly,
As the
as the
licensee.
licensee. My name didn't go over the door, it was his name. So how do you think I felt?
Not even both of them. I thought
But
I would have
you-
expected. Well, they could at least put both.
But even going back to sort of soap operas in the 1970s, Coronation Street always had a lady landlord, didn't it?
Yes.
Do you think that was on
Yeah.
purpose then?
I don't
Like
know.
to deliberately put it in the face, saying, "Well, we've got it the
Yeah.
other way around.
Yeah.
It's a strong
Yeah.
woman with a massive
Yeah.
beehive and
Yeah.
leopard print."
Well, there was the one before that, wasn't there? I'm forgetting what she was called, but that was Bet.
Oh,
And
that
then
was
there was
better. Oh, yes, there was.
Annie
Yeah.
Walker.
There was Annie Walker.
That-
That's it. Well done.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
so again, imagine how I felt was that again I was doing all of the things to run a pub, and I believe I run that pub successfully without the help of the husband, because he was very often not there. So he used to go out
That's even
and
worse,
left me
isn't
to
it?
it.
It's even
Had
worse.
at
Not
the
even there.
time the pub, I had my son and a dog as well. I had all of that to look after. But the pub that we had, I mean, I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful pub, and I did a lot of work there, very successful. I did a lot of cooking, and earned a lot of money with the food, which I suppose I was poking somebody in the eye really and saying, yeah, had the man done some of this as well, they could have had half of it, but they're not going to, because that money's going in my pocket. So, which it did. And
Is that where some of the business acumen comes into it? Because not many people realise that the margin was in food,
oh
wasn't
God, yeah, absolutely. So I made an absolute killing.
Yeah.
And because I could cook, I was able to cook everything from scratch, and I did that, every day. So that's sort of a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth when you first start off and that was, I think, my first journey into business, because I was looking at things differently then, and that was a lesson that I learned. But going on to what Simon said about me going to football with my dad, I went when I was little, and I was the only girl there, and I was put down the front, and I always been short anyway, so that was okay. But I was the only girl, and like you said, on Wednesday when we went to the Stadium of Light, cannot believe how many girls were there, young girls. Sort of, and in their football strips, because they play football. How good is that? I'm so pleased for them. And it's the Hebburn Honeys, and I know a friend of mine, her daughter plays, so that is absolutely brilliant.
And it doesn't look or feel out of place either, does
Not
it?
at all.
Like no one looks and going, "Look, she's wearing a strip."
No.
Nobody
didn't-
thinks anything of it, do they? It's just
didn't even
it's
think
a commonplace
about
thing.
it. Of course, yeah. So, but then when I came up north with my second husband, he was into football too, so that was great. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to get out there and socialise. So the best place for us was to go and join a football club, which we did. And he became the chairman of Easington Colliery, which was great. It was absolutely amazing.
Ah.
But this again, women. Okay, so when I met the committee, I was the only woman that was on the committee. And what did they say to me? Was,
Go and make the tea.
oh, it's really good to have you on board. You'll be able to make the tea. You'll be able to wash up. You'll be able to make the food. I went,
Christ.
stop right
That's
there.
embarrassing.
You just stop. I don't do the washing
Yeah.
up at home, so I'm not going to do it here. So why would you think that me, at my age, is going to pander to all these men? No. But what they couldn't
I'm surprised if any of them got out alive.
pull
Saying that to
their
you.
flat caps over their face.
Yeah.
But what they didn't realise was that I could talk football with them. And it took them a long time for them to realise that I could do that. So, but again, because of my business head, we managed to take them from losing money to actually in a profit. And we got there again. Me, Anne makes it happen and all of that. I went and submitted some business plans so that we could get funding, and we got all the terracing done, and it was absolutely amazing. But again, business. They didn't see me as that person. They didn't see that I could do that. And I even offered another club, I won't mention who it is, that I would do their business planning for them, and they actually employed a solicitor that cost them £10,000 because they didn't believe that I could do it. And that's what I've been doing. Business planning is something that I'm passionate about. It's, my one-page business plan especially. But they didn't believe that I could do it. And that's very hurtful when, men think that they're much better than women, and they're not in the workplace. And I don't mean that, again, it's not a blanket statement, because there are some men who are okay about it.
Yeah.
But also something else, this is a personal thing really, that Alan and I went to look for a new car, and you know what I'm going to say, don't you? That the guy asked me, what colour would I want? It's like, I don't know. What colour did they come in? I thought it was a bit of a strange question. And what he didn't realise was, because of my business head, I went and researched the car that we wanted. I went and looked at the performance of the car, because I wanted a really decent car. And because Alan went, it's no good asking her about the colour. Ask her what she really wants. And that I went through, right, I want this, I want it to do that, I want da-da-da-da-da. And they went, oh, okay then. But again, he wasn't speaking to me as a woman because he thought that the colour was important to me, and it wasn't. And that's a preconception.
It looks pretty.
And I couldn't give a monkey's cast what colour it is, as long as it does the job that I want it to do. And
What sort of year are you up to now, Anne? Are you sort of 80s
yes,
or 90s or
80s? No, 90s. Sorry, 90s.
Yeah.
So that was sort of one of the sort of big things. But going on to when I run or had the training company, there was a thing. You did lots of training, to keep yourself up to date, the CPD things, and sort of self-care, if you like. But all the training sessions that I would go to, they would say, as a woman, you should always have a power suit. What? What do you mean? A power suit?
a man's suit?
A man's suit. And just to tell you as well, a woman's suit doesn't have pockets inside. A man's does. just for, so I'll throw that in. But
It's because a man likes to reposition himself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fidget.
But why do I
Are you talking bottom half or top half?
both?
All right.
But do you know what? Why do I need a power suit? It did, and also the car that you drove. What sort of car do you drive? As a an owner of a business, you should have
Yeah.
this super duper car. And
That's very London. That's the kind of conversation I have with
It's-
Steve. He's like, "Oh, you've got to, as a contractor, I've got to turn up in this kind
Yeah.
of car, in this kind
Yeah.
of suit. I've got to project a certain." So that's very materialistic,
But-
isn't it? And of course, that's kind of how he's turned out. He loves stuff and
but
things.
this was in
over,
the northeast, though,
other
Simon.
things.
This was in the northeast.
Was it?
Yeah.
And I ended up with a sports car that was sort of relevant, if you like, to my position as a CEO. Well, why did I have to do that? It cost me a lot of money. It cost me a lot in fuel, and I couldn't get out the damn thing most of the time because it was so low. So, it wasn't a comfortable car. It was just for image. Well, why do I, as a woman in business, have to have this image when, and also makeup. Makeup's my big thing. I don't wear makeup. Why should I, as a woman in business? I don't have to do that. I am what I am, and that's how I want to be portrayed, is that I'm this woman and I think I've got a really good business brain, and I don't need to wear makeup or wear a power suit, but I was told that would be the way that I would actually infiltrate into being, sort of a business owner. But
What, and be taken
yeah,
seriously?
to be well, why? Why would I do that? But
Just on women of sort of, because you're a woman in power. Was there any particular women that you sort of perceived as sort of iconic, women that you looked at in public life that you sort of resonated with? I know, I can obviously think of a couple that round about that time are pretty prevalent.
you're probably not going to like this at all, because I'm going to say Margaret Thatcher.
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting because me and Simon discussed this at length, and we don't have an issue with that point.
No.
But the Northeast does.
She's
And
impressive.
that,
Everybody looks at what she did, what she closed down, rather than what she
yeah.
opened up.
But the one thing
the
that
opportunity she gave
I
us.
suppose I admired her for was that she followed through. Whether it was right or wrong, she followed
Yeah.
through. And this was her plan. And I know maybe she should have deviated from that at some point, but she didn't. And she was a powerful woman. A powerful woman.
Yeah. She had speech. She had. I didn't realize she had voice coaching.
Oh,
Right?
She had to change her voice to make people listen,
Yep.
and that was based on polling of the
Yep.
public. When they do these research groups, and they say, "What do you think of this?" and how do you perceive this? And that was one of the bits of feedback. And she went to a voice coach and changed the way she spoke.
and that's
The lady is not for
it's
changing
not for turning.
Turning.
or turning. Turning, that's it, yeah.
That's what I was advised to do too, and I went through,
Really?
not in too much detail, if you like. I went through something very similar, but again, why should I be any different? I don't want to change myself. I just want to change the face of business, and I don't need to change the way I talk or the way I look to be able to do that. It's my actions that are more important. But when I had the training organisation, I went there as an employee. I was an operations manager, and but with the carrot that they dangled that I would get a position on the board, which for me that was an absolute massive step up, to suddenly become a board member. And I went and did what they asked me. We did fine with our inspection, very hard work, but you know what, it's worth it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I was in the sort of arena where I love most, was training and teaching, and so I really enjoyed that. And I was offered the position of director, and the guy that was actually the chairman of the board, when he used to greet me, he used to greet me with a hug. But any other board member, he would shake their hand. And I was out with him one day and said to him, Ian, why is it that you give me a hug and you shake the hand of the other board members? And he said to me, because you're a woman.
Cringe.
I won't
Yeah.
tell you what I said because I have told Simon, but I don't think it's appropriate. And also he always used to ask me to make his coffee. Well, I said to him that in future you shake my hand and you make your own coffee, and that's when the relationship like really sort of. I'm not sure whether it blossomed or what, but I had to set my stall and say, I'm not
Yeah.
having this, because again, I was the only woman on the board because I was there on merit. I wasn't there because, we had to have the token woman. I was there because I'd
Yeah.
achieved something that they've not been able to achieve previously. So that for me was pretty awful.
That sort of reaction, though, I bet you've changed the way he looks
Oh,
at things
hopefully.
in some way. If he's a man worth his salt, he would have saw what happened there and not just applied it to you, but would have went, Christ, I've done that a few times.
Yeah.
Are they all thinking the same thing?
Exactly.
Damn it.
So really, that was quite a bad experience in a high level position in a company. And as it happens, I bought the company and moved forward with it, which
There you go.
I loved it so much, and I bought
bought
the
it.
company.
Yeah, I bought it.
Yeah.
Off your pop.
So yeah, that was a pretty awful experience, but I put it to good use really, and then bought the company. And after that, I actually had Alan working for me, which changed the dynamics in our marriage as well as working, because again, I was put in an awkward situation where I was running a team meeting with my senior members of the team, and Alan challenged me, but not in the right manner. and everybody, and you could see that everybody didn't know what was going to happen next, because they all looked at me and had maybe this is slightly different, but I just wonder whether he challenged a bloke in the same way, and I don't think he would have. But I had to close the meeting and take him home, and
Sort him out.
Get him to do
mad.
just explain now. Come on, you've got to allow me to have the authority in the workplace because I own the company, and that again was a real.
Not just as a woman, but as partners, as as a couple. Even you don't want to usurp your wife or your husband's power in front of everybody else. Because it's an abuse of your relationship.
Yeah.
Then, isn't it? I'm using our closeness in the conference room. It's not right.
You didn't buy the company together, Anne? No?
No,
No.
I bought it as an investment for me. Because he wasn't interested in what I was doing and where I wanted to take it. But of course, I knew what he was good at, and I thought, well, rather than employ somebody else, it's nice to have him on board, and that's what he did, and he did a great job for me. He was absolutely amazing, but it was just at that point where my authority was challenged, and again by a bloke. And
So I'm coming to work for you, Anne. And what are your 3 non-negotiables that I need to that would really make me fit into your team?
non-negotiable. Oh my God!
There's a question. He likes putting that question
Non-negotiable
in its various forms.
Oh my God!
So, yeah, this is like, if you look at your own values, what would help if I was to match your values? What three particular things